If you are at all familiar with memory levels, you've probably at least seen, if not played, Killbot. If you have played Killbot, what did you do the first time you played it? For me, I played 1% of the level and immediately left. If you too played this level for 5 seconds and immediately gave up, then you're not alone, because I doubt there's many people that would want to sit through this level. For this reason, most people don't actually know the true difficulty of a lot of these parts. Some of the most infamous parts of this level aren't actually as hard as they look, believe it or not. This brings me to the whole topic of this video. I'm just going to take every part of Killbot and just rank it by difficulty. These are the 10 parts of the level that I'm going to be ranking in this video. Alright, so let's start. These parts will be ordered from easiest to hardest. In my opinion, this is the easiest part of Killbot. First of all, the cube is completely auto. If you look closely, you can see jump pads just propelling it, and also the wave is pretty easy. It's not very tight. I did choke this last click a couple of times for some reason, though. I don't know why. This part is pretty short, but honestly the hardest part about it is that you can't really see that well. I mean, there's these glitches going on and stuff, and there's that weird looking face appearing every now and then. But compared to the rest of the parts of this level, this is pretty easy, to be honest. I never really had trouble with this part. This is the part directly after the wave cube duel, and honestly, I think this part is pretty much just purely memorization. For the first jump, you jump late as the robot, and there are a couple of other timings as well. In one part, you have to jump between 2 blocks. But still, these timings are pretty forgiving, and it just takes like 20 minutes of learning them to get pretty good at them. I rarely ever died here whenever I beat this level. I only died to the first jump every now and then, which those deaths were pretty dumb, to be honest. Still think this part is pretty manageable, and if you're trying to beat this level, this part isn't really something that you really need to worry about all too much. This is where the level ramps up in difficulty a bit. However, I got really consistent with this pre-drop. I was like passing this part every 1 or 2 attempts. Like, I never really died here all that much. The hardest part about the pre-drop is just learning it, because this is like very not easy to learn. There's a lot going on. And the green orbs are pretty infamous for some reason. I find that I can just buffer a lot of them and just hit a few of them like late and stuff. I have heard some people say that the pre-drop never really got consistent for them, but for some reason for me, it got very consistent for me. I was passing this part a lot. This is the first part so far that I wasn't extremely consistent at. Most of my deaths were to this swing copter because the transition into it is a bit iffy, and it's pretty easy to lose control after the transition or just immediately die. I actually think this swing copter is easier than the other one, even though it is way tighter. This is because the transition into this one is a little bit better and easier to control. And everything else in this part is pretty easy, just this whole part is carried by the swing copters pretty much. The first drop of Killbot is undoubtedly the most infamous part of the entire level, and it's easy to see why. This is one of the memory parts of all time. Whenever people think about memory, this is one of the main parts they think about. That must mean that it's really hard, right? No. Okay, that's an overstatement. This part is very hard to learn, but once I learned it, I still sucked at it. After spending a few hours playing this part, I still sucked at it. But after dedicating half my life to this part over the period of the next few days, I still sucked at it. Okay, this part did get very consistent after playing it a lot. There were a few choke points and like hard timings that I never really got all that great at. This includes the spam, this spider thing, and this ball part. I usually pass this part around every 4 attempts that I got to it, because usually of those 3 choke points I just mentioned, but the rest was pretty consistent. Whenever I first tried this part, it felt absolutely impossible. I could never really figure out how to do this part consistently for a very long time, mostly because I would always die as the UFO to stuff. The way to do this part is to pay attention to the UFO, but for some reason when I did, I would die as the wave. I would always die as the wave to these short little spam parts. I opted to pay attention to the wave instead of the UFO. This method for me was a bit easier than following the UFO, although I still did die as the UFO a lot. This part was a very big run killer for me for a very long time. However, the more I played it, I did gradually get more consistent. It might just be because I'm bad at spam or something, but I still do die here every now and then whenever I play this level, but it's nowhere near as hard as it used to be for me, which is why I'm putting it in around the middle of all these parts. This is one of the most confusing parts of the level for me. I don't know why, but I died here so much, and I had no clue why I died a lot of the time. Usually in this part, I paid attention to the spider, but sometimes, if I clicked in the wrong place as the spider, I wouldn't even die as the spider, I would die as the ball. There was this one double click that's on the screen right now. That double click, I just could not do that. I don't know why, man, but I was just struggling with that. Some of the timings are very unclear and very specific. On the day I was beating the level, I spent around 3 hours just playing this part to get better at it. Glad I did that, because the next time I got to that part, I beat the level. This is without a doubt the hardest wave part of the level. Although this part is pretty open, there are a few corridors with like random spikes in them that makes it way tighter. But my main problem with this wave is that I can't really see it that well. The dark nature of the wave and the pulses and the spikes being kind of hard to see makes this part a lot harder for me. And also it's pretty hard to keep up, it's very fast. Before I played this level, when I was back just like watching it, I thought this part looked really hard because of the ball at the top, but the ball doesn't really matter, just completely ignore that, just pay attention to the wave. Another factor is that I didn't really play this part as much as the other parts, so that might be why I never really got that good at it. This is where this level starts to go crazy. Not only is this right at the end, but this is very hard. I don't really think that the straight flies in this part are particularly really hard. I think it's the green orbs after them that are so hard for no reason. Like, you have to click perfectly. Like, if you click a slight, like, millisecond too late, then you're just screwed. Not to mention there are other orbs that you have to hit as well, and some of those can still kill you as well if you don't time those, but those are still pretty forgiving. However, since I'm a 60Hz player and I just naturally suck at ship, I did die to the straight flies a lot. Something to note about each of these straight flies is that they automatically just straighten you out whenever you enter them to make the transition better. This can kill you if you're not, like, prepared for it, or if you're, like, really nervous and you just click automatically and just immediately hit the ceiling. Most of the difficulty of this part, for me, does come from those orbs, though, after the straight flies. And also, this part is more skill-based than memorization-based, unlike some of the other parts. Speaking of strictly skill-based, let's go to the hardest part of the level. Okay, this part is way harder than every other part of this whole level. One of the most impressive things I've ever done in Geometry Dash is fluked the last UFO of Killbot, and I just didn't die to it at all. And there's a reason for that, and most people die here a lot of times, because this part is so stupidly hard for no reason. First of all, you can't see a dang thing. It is so dark, you literally can't see anything, and also there's a bunch of black saws everywhere that you cannot see. So, like, actually, whenever you look at this, there's red outlines. It doesn't look very tight, but there's saws in those red outlines. So, like, if you barely touch one of them, you're just screwed. Honestly, I don't really think there's any way to get, like, really consistent at this part, because it's just that hard. The click patterns and some of the structuring is just really weird. And some of the timings are so stupidly specific that if you mess up one, then the other just becomes impossible. It's like, I mean, just like you also have to do it with nerves as well. Usually I get extremely unlucky with levels, so I'm very glad I flew this last UFO and I just didn't have to deal with it. But there is one part that I forgot to talk about that I think is probably harder than all of these parts. The last one spike jump.